Good morning. We are ready for Genesis chapter 31. We have taken a break from Genesis for a while. We were studying in Acts during the move. We are no longer in Montana. We are in Wellsville, Missouri. We're half unpacked and half not packed, or whatever you want to call it.
That meant the same thing.
Oh, it meant the same thing. Well, we're in a sea of boxes. Nothing has found its spot yet. Well, some things have.
Our boxes are in the basement. We're not in the sea anymore.
Oh, okay.
We're above the sea.
Alright, so this morning we're ready for Genesis chapter 31. Like I said, we kind of stopped on Genesis and went to Acts for a while. So this is the story of Jacob leaves secretly for Canaan. You got to remember, Jacob was in there with Laban what was the place called where they're at? I can't think what it's called, but anyway, where Abraham's not descendants, but forefathers were at. Where Abraham's family was before they went to Canaan. He's there. He met with that family there. He married two of Laban's daughters. And so he has been working for Laban, and he feels like he's supposed to leave. So it says in Genesis chapter 31, verse 1, Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belongs to our father, he has made all this wealth. You have to remember, Jacob had worked for free. He'd worked for, first of all, for 7 years for Rachel, and then Laban tricked him and gave him Leah instead. But he then gave him, after the wedding week, he gave him Rachel, and he worked another 7 years for Rachel. And so then after that, he was ready to leave. He was like, okay, I've paid for my wives. I've given you 14 years of my life. I want to go home now. Well, Laban was like, well, no, stay with me, because when you work for me, man, everything prospers. My animals do good. My land does good. My household does good. Stay with me. He wanted to make the money. Because he said that God blessed him by Jacob being there. And so Jacob did. He stayed. But then they made an agreement for wages, and Laban kept changing the wages, but no matter how hard Laban tried to make all the wealth come to him, God still blessed Jacob. And that, guys, is we cannot ignore the fact that God blessed Jacob and not Laban. Okay? Don, come and sit on the couch, okay? Thank you. So we can't ignore the fact that God blessed one. Was Jacob a better person than Laban? Was he smarter? Maybe he was better looking. None of those are true, are they? Maybe he was taller or shorter or skinnier. Or maybe he was heavier. I don't know. But none of those things are true. God chose so that his purposes, for his purposes. And that, once again, goes back to Ephesians. And let me read that. It's a very, very important that we often, when we read Ephesians, we oftentimes just kind of skip over it. So Ephesians chapter 1 verse 11 says, we have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined according to his purposes, who works all things after the counsel of his will. Not some things. He doesn't work some things after the counsel of his will. He works all things after the counsel of his will. Okay? Everything. Everything that has ever happened, everything that is happening, and everything that will happen. Not one thing escapes. And we want to attribute the good things to happen to God and the bad things to Satan. Guys, they're not like two evil or two gods. One is good and one is evil. No. Satan was created by God and can do nothing that God doesn't allow him to do. Everything that Satan does, he does because God allows him to do it. And God has a purpose in that, and that is what we have to come to grips with, is the fact that God has a purpose in the things that happen in the world. Okay? So obviously Jacob was blessed and Laban wasn't. That is election, guys. That's exactly what it is. A lot of people don't like to hear that word. They don't believe in that, but that's election. Because Jacob was, if you want to be honest about it, Jacob was a deceiver, wasn't he? Jacob kind of stole his brother's birthright. He went in and he told his father that he was Esau when he was actually Jacob. He wore clothing because Jacob was blind to try and make Jacob think he was Esau, right? Make Isaac think he was Esau, right? And so he was a deceiver. He was no better. It was God's choosing. Does that make sense? All right. So then we go on in verse 2. It says, Jacob saw the attitude of Laban, and behold, it was not friendly towards him as formerly. Because why was this so? Because God was blessing Jacob, okay? No matter what Laban did, God still blessed. If Laban gave him the spotted ones, the spotted ewes, or the spotted lambs, then the sheep had more spotted lambs. If he gave him the striped ones, the sheep had more striped lambs. Whatever Laban gave him for his wages, God made so that the sheep had more of that. Because God was blessing Jacob. Because this was his election. This was for his purposes. There was a purpose behind it. Okay? Alright, so verse 3 says, Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and your relatives, and I will be with you. So once again, we see he's with him there, and he promises to be with him going back to his father's land and when he gets to his father's land. Okay? So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field and said to them, I see your father's attitude, that it is not friendly toward me as formerly, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, God did not allow him to hurt me. 10 different times he changed what he would get for his wages. And literally, his boys and Laban thought that Jacob had stolen all this stuff. Because Jacob now had huge herds and flocks. Because God had blessed him. If he spoke thus, the speckled shall be your wages. Then all the flocks brought forth speckled. And if he spoke thus, the striped shall be your wages. Then the flock brought forth striped. Whatever Laban said his wages would be, the flocks would have, that's what they would have. And so Laban would see that they were having more, he'd change it to whatever was the least amount, and he would, to try and get the more lambs for himself. But it didn't work out. Thus God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. And it came about at the time when the flock were mating, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the male goats which were mating were striped, speckled, and mottled. Molted. No mottled. Huh? Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. He said, Lift up now your eyes and see that all the male goats which are mating are striped, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now arise, leave this land, and return to the land of your birth. Rachel and Leah said to him, do we still have any portion of inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned to him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and has also entirely consumed our purchase price. Surely all the wealth which God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. They were obviously, God touched their hearts and caused them to be willing to go with him and to leave. So God's telling him to leave. His wives are agreeing that we should leave. So it says, then Jacob arose and put his children and his wives upon camels, and he drove away all his livestock and all his property which he had gathered, his acquired livestock which he had gathered in Padan Aram. Okay, so it was Padan Aram where they were at, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. So here we have a start already. This is where the patriarchs or basically the tribes of Israel come from. The fathers of the tribes of Israel, right? And the mother of those are already stealing and having false gods. I guess they had it. They come by it honestly. And Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, by telling him that he was fleeing. By not telling him that he was fleeing. So he fled. Once again, we see Jacob deceiving someone. You notice that? Now, when people try to tell us, let me read just a little bit more and then. So he fled with all that he had, and he arose and crossed the Euphrates River and set his face towards the hill country of Gilead. Now, when people tell us that if we do certain things, that God will bless us. If we pray a prayer or make a decision, or God will give us all this and that. When the prosperity gospel here just blows this all out. This blows the prosperity gospel all to pieces. Guys, it is not based on what we do. We are not blessed based on what we do or what we don't do. Okay? Jacob was obviously a deceiver. Okay? He's still a deceiver. After all that God has done for him, he didn't go up to Laban and tell him, hey, I'm leaving, I'm taking my family, and I'm going. No, he tried to sneak away and get away before Laban could realize. And so guess what? It's going to cause problems. Long and short of it, it's going to cause problems. In the same way, in today's society or any other society, guys, we are not blessed based on the things we do. Oh yes, it makes a fact that if we do, there are things that, if we make poor decisions, there's consequences for it. But making a certain decision doesn't especially make us. If we have something, it's not because of us. It's because of God. Okay? It's because of God. And if we want something, and we need something, we should look to Him, pray to Him, cry out to Him, seek Him, trust Him, and trust that He will give us not what we want maybe, but what we need. Does that make sense? Trust that He will give us what we need. And then it goes on, and so here the next section it says Laban pursues Jacob. I wonder why. To Laban, he felt like, everything that Jacob had, Jacob came there with what? Nothing. Clothes on his back, and that's it. And now he's leaving a rich rich man. He came though with nothing, and he's leaving with all kinds. Has a bunch of children now. He has more than one wife. Those all were his. Those wives were his. Those children came from him originally. So it says, when it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, then he took his kinsman with him and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream of the night and said to him, be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad. In other words,
Don't talk to him at all?
well, he can talk to him, but don't tell him he's bad for leaving or good for leaving. In other words, don't mistreat him. I wonder what he would have done to him if God hadn't done that. If he'd killed him and took back everything he had or what, I don't know. Laban caught up with Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and deceive me? And did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with joy and with songs, with timbrel and with lyre, and did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly. In all honesty, once again, Jacob kind of did foolishly. I mean, you should not burn your bridges. You should at least say bye and explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. They might not agree with what you're going to do, so at least tell them. Okay? Jacob is a deceiver. I believe with time he will grow out of that. But at this point in his life, he's kind of a deceiver. Sometimes we're all maybe that way more than we realize. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob. Now you have indeed gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? He's mad because he stole his gods. Well, actually Rachel stole his gods, but still he's mad because he stole his. Do you remember it said that she took his gods? Then Jacob replied to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. The one with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings, and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle, and she sat on them. And Laban felt through all the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is upon me. So he searched, but did not find the household idols. Do you understand? Okay. Then Jacob became angry and contended with Laban. And Jacob said to Laban, what is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Though you have felt through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, and that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn of beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. You require it of my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was by day, the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. So basically he's telling him, I've served you. Although he's a deceiver, he obviously tried to do a good job for him. Then 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been for me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, so he rendered judgment last night. Alright, so we're almost through. I know it's kind of a long chapter, but we just like a little bit. The covenant of Mizpah. Then Laban replied to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children, and the flocks are my flock, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? Literally, the flocks came from his flocks, didn't they? The children came from his daughters, and the daughters truly were his daughters. And Laban felt like everything there, this man had come into his home empty-handed with nothing. He took him home, he gave him a place to sleep, a place to eat, and now he was leaving with almost everything he had. And I can kind of see Laban's point, okay? But I can also see Jacob's side, wanting to leave and go and do his own thing. So now
Jacob worked for him.
Yeah, Jacob worked for him. That's right, he did. And God blessed him.
Also, I mean, I would have been really upset if I was supposed to be marrying Rachel and he ended up making it, so I married the other one instead.
Leah?
Yeah, I wouldn't have been there a minute longer.
I don't know, guys. I'm afraid I would have somehow figured this out up front.
Oh, I would have too.
But I guess somehow it was good for maybe Jacob to get a little dose of his own medicine. Why?
Yeah,
he was a
and I see
deceiver.
that in this chapter. I mean, he's getting, or through this whole thing, that he's getting what he did to his brother and everything else.
Right.
But now, I mean, he worked longer than what he was supposed to.
Right.
He got deceived several times. He's been ripped off. He worked for what he has, and now he has the right to leave without Laban's say.
Right, he does. But why didn't he tell Laban before he left?
You don't have to.
Well, he doesn't have to.
You should always.
But you
I
should.
know.
That's his daughters. That's his grandchildren.
I know, but I mean, if someone did all that to me, I wouldn't. I would feel like I don't owe you nothing.
Okay. Well, that might be true, Wyatt, but if it was me, I would still feel like you owed at least him to let him know that he was leaving. To tell him, hey, after all these years, I mean, everything he had there was a blessing from God, but also it came from what Laban originally had. It came from what God had blessed Laban with. Does that make sense? So if he had told him out ahead that he was leaving and trusted God to take care of him, he said the reason he didn't tell him was because he was afraid that he would take his daughters by force. But God said that he would be with him. Was he trusting God by leaving? without letting him know.
No.
No, he wasn't, was he? But he will over time, when it's all before it's all said and done. He will learn to trust God. Okay, but here, it shows us what we ourselves go through. We go through times when we should trust and we don't. And by reading these things and seeing what he went through, it helps us realize that we are to trust too. That sometimes when we should trust, we don't. So then Laban says, "So now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." And Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." So they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Now Laban called it, whoa, I can't say that word, Jagar Hudutha. But Jacob called it Gilead.
Gilead.
Gilead. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me this day." Therefore it was named Gilead and Mizpah. For he said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent one from the other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, sees. God is witness between you and me." Man, he was kind of telling him, "You're not allowed to have any other wives but my daughters." Laban said to Jacob, "Behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness that I have not passed by this, that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me for harm." In other words, they won't come back and hurt each other. They won't try to harm each other. "The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. His sons and daughters, who were his sons and daughters that he kissed there?
Grandchildren?
I'd say his grandchildren. We don't think of it that way so much, but the honest truth about it is Jackson comes also from your dad and from me.
It's the son of your son, your
Right.
grandson.
Right, so it still comes from us. Wyatt came from me, and so Jackson comes from me. He has my blood in me and has your father's blood in him. And so to Laban, these children, to him were his children. They came from him. And so, yeah, I'm sure he got up and kissed his actual daughters and his grandchildren and told them goodbye. I don't think that the Bible records that he ever saw them again. We have a hard time with that, imagining that, because we have cars and airplanes and we can go get somewhere quick. But for them to go back and see, I mean, that was almost impossible.
Yeah, especially because you have flocks to take care of.
Yeah, I mean, you had your herds to take care of and your things to take care of, and you couldn't just find a neighbor to take care of them. They'd take them if you left them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You had to stay there and live life. You had to stay there and do what you were called to do. Us with cars and airplanes and trains, and we can jump in the car and drive 1,000 miles and be there for a day or two and drive 1,000 miles back, or we can drive 500 miles one way, turn around that day yet, and come back the 500 miles and be back within 24 hours.
Yeah, but then that probably took a few weeks to go one way.
Yeah, I mean, just one way, would have taken a long time. With Dawn, you good. But it would have taken a lot. It was a big undertaking, so it was different for them back then. But anyway, we see Jacob kind of getting what he dished out. Okay. Once again, we see God blessed him, but there was also, even though God was blessing him, there was consequences for his actions, wasn't there? And we can say that he wasn't blessed because of the things he did so much. He was blessed because God chose to bless him. But there was also consequences for the bad things he did, right? If he had told Laban and made peace with that before he left, Laban wouldn't have rushed after him. If he had trusted God, God said, I will be with you. Jesus told us in Matthew, the last chapter of Matthew, the last verse of the chapter, he says, I will be with you till the end of the age. In other words, he will never leave us if we have trusted him, if we have truly received the Holy Spirit and are truly trusting him. He will always be with us. But yet, how many of us sometimes forget to trust? We're getting in a hurry and the car won't start. We need to be somewhere and we get angry or we fret, we worry, or maybe that's just one example. Think of all the times that we don't stop and really, truly seek God first. Matthew 6:33 says, seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness. What does that mean? Literally what it means is we are to seek his righteousness, not our righteousness. We seek his kingdom first and his righteousness. In other words, literally what that means, when we seek God's righteousness, we come to the realization that we have no righteousness of our own, and so we trust in Christ. Does that make sense? And so we are just like they were, like Jacob was in a lot of ways. We deceive each other, we deceive ourselves, sometimes we don't trust the way we should, we don't seek God the way we should, and we should use that and look at our own lives and realize that it is so important that we seek God first, that we realize that he is always with us, he is there with us, that he is going, whatever comes along, nothing can happen. I get amazed for years I carried a gun in the line of work that I did. And for years I used to be like, everybody should carry a gun. But honestly, truly, what good is a gun? If we truly believe that God is sovereignly in control of everything that happens, what does a gun do for us? Absolutely. If you truly believe that, if you truly believe that God is sovereignly in control of everything that happens, that if you believe Ephesians chapter 1, verse 11, then a gun does you absolutely no good. At the same time, you shouldn't just walk out in front of a semi-truck on the interstate and say, well, if God doesn't want me to die or doesn't want me to get hurt, he'll make that semi-truck veer off the road, blow a tire and veer off the road. Jesus says we're not to tempt the Lord. Remember, Satan told him to jump off the high mountain or to command the rocks to be turned into bread.
The Lord your God.
Huh?
Jesus said, do not test the Lord your God.
Right. We're not to test him. Even Jesus didn't command the rocks to turn into bread, so if he could have, he had the power to. But he trusted in God to provide what he needed, right? We should do the same. Alright, so I've beat that horse to death, so we'll go on with chapter 31 and 32 tomorrow. Alright, so let's Anybody have anything to say about that? Any thoughts? Alright, let's pray, guys. Father God, thank you for this time together. I thank you for your word. I pray, Father, that you help each one of us to search our hearts, to ask ourselves, Lord, are we trusting you? Are we depending on ourselves? Are we being honest with ourselves and with those around us? I pray, Father, that you cause us to long for you and to seek for you, that we would seek your righteousness, that we would realize that you are with us, that you are sovereignly in control of everything that happens in the world, that you are working out all things after the counsel of your will. Father, I pray that you help us to realize that, to believe that, to trust in that we would, Lord, above all else in our lives, that we would seek you, we would trust you. Father, I just ask that you go with us through this day and help us to get the things done we need to do. Be with us during the service tonight. Lord, I pray for the members of our church, Lord, that you touch their hearts, that you draw them to you and cause them to need you and to seek you. Father, I thank you for the place of ministry that you've given us. And I just ask that you would help us to do what you've called us to do. Pray that you help us to be faithful and to reach this town with your word. Lord, just forgive us where we fail. In Jesus' name.